SET, or signal extraction technology, is our first invention at Masimo. It is the first technology that takes pulse oximetry to what is known as modern pulse oximetry today, which is a pulse oximeter that is accurate and reliable even during motion, even during low perfusion. 70 to 90% of the alarms used to be false alarms. Now, fast forward, with the invention of SET, Dartmouth-Hitchcock does a 10-year study and shows the group with SET pulse oximetry had no more dead in bed. 0. The group that didn't have this technology, they had several deaths. While they were collecting this 10-year data, which published over a year ago, they had already shown nurse satisfaction was off the charts. These are the same nurses that didn't want pulse oximetry in the ward before due to the false alarms. They also noted costs went down significantly because ICU transfers and rapid response team activations dropped by over 50%. So they saved $7 million a year and they didn't have dead in bed anymore. The technology that Dartmouth deployed is a surveillance system that we call Patient Safety Net. They carry either their smartphone or their pager, and when a problem happens on their patients, it sends the alert to them and tells them what and why. And if they're not responding fast enough, it'll elevate and escalate that alarm to additional nurses, and at some point it'll send an alarm to everybody if there's no action.
As a nurse, one of the worst things that you can do is leave a patient one round and they're awake, alert, and talking to you, and then coming back in the next hour and finding that patient unresponsive and having no way to have known that was going to happen. That's horrible. It's terrifying. It's not something that ever goes away.
We had an incident that really was seminal. A relatively young person having a pretty minor procedure. They had pain, they were anxious, they got appropriate care. But again, they were one of those rare people who a small amount went a long way, and they surprised everyone, but they were found dead in their room.
We came to the realization that we could not predict in every patient who would deteriorate. Even though they might be perfectly healthy, they would react to a polypharmaceutical mix differently than others.
That was really the sentinel case that set our quality and patient safety group here at Dartmouth-Hitchcock off in a quest to make sure that that never happened to another patient.
Really what we were first focused on was this respiratory depression due to opioids. And that particular problem, the oxygen saturation is just the right signal.
When we started to look for pulse oximetry technology, we found that the Masimo sensor had a lot of technology for rejecting noise and motion.
We found a nurse champion on one of the units that was willing to try this, sold it to nursing that, look, we don't want this to be a monitoring platform. We want it to be a surveillance platform, a safety net.
One thing that's important to note is that we thought of it as a system. It wasn't just buying a monitor. It was thinking through all of the different factors that would come into play, such as what kinds of sensors would be appropriate to use, how would we alarm, where would we alarm, who would the alarms go to, what the settings would be on those alarms.
We had an interdisciplinary approach, so it was, the representatives from Masimo, our biomed, our quality and safety. We surveyed the nurses, we rounded every day. We would say, what makes this work harder for you? What can we do to make it better? And things were changed.
People worry about, well, can we afford this? Is it too expensive? We actually had a return in terms of savings because instead of having to use the ICU to treat a complication that was preventable, we were detecting that complication, treating it rapidly, and it never led to a multi-day stay in the ICU.
So we saw a reduction of 65% in rescue calls, and we saw a reduction of 48% in transfers to the ICU on that unit. 2 other units without monitoring, we saw no changes in their calls.
We've spread this system to all 200 of our general inpatient beds.
Every patient counts. We're monitoring every patient all the time to fulfill that promise that we made in 2007 that no patient will ever die here when it's preventable. When we can monitor them, we can get resources to the bedside in time to rescue them.
We saw just a profound impact. We have not had a single patient in the 10 years who, while monitored on this system, suffered an opioid overdose death.
In my 36 years of doing this type of work, it's the only time that I can say what I did as a clinical engineer actually saved someone's life.
And we began to notice it catching many things. It wasn't just desaturations. It would be events of bradycardia. We would have patients that maybe missed a dose of medication that affected their heart rate, and suddenly we noticed their heart rate was different. It caught us by surprise. It detected a lot of sleep apnea in patients that nobody knew existed.
We got to a point where we were able to do device integration. So instead of somebody going around and doing vital signs and writing those on a piece of paper and then writing them in the chart after, it directly entered. So we had a system here at Dartmouth where what was on the monitor was directly put into our medical record. So it really did end up saving time. And that was a safety feature because there wasn't the risk of transcription error.
I'm a clinical nurse supervisor at night. I have a lot of new grads on the floor who may not know those initial signs of decline as well. And so what I get as a charge nurse is I have my own Masimo pager that's a backup for all the nurses at the bedside. So anytime a patient has a change, it will initially alarm the nurse at the bedside, but then if it wasn't addressed in enough time, it then goes up to me as the charge nurse, and I have 10 years experience. You know, I worked in the ICU, I'm there to support the nurses, and I can go and follow up with that nurse. Like, is your patient having a change right now? How can I be of assistance to you? Do I need to activate an early warning sign or have life safety come to the bedside? And it helps me to target who's having changes on the floor when I'm in charge of 35 patients every night.
So one of the other advantages of the system that we have in place now is that we can monitor patients using a wireless sensor. And for instance, in one of our units where we have a lot of orthopedic surgeries, the patients are up and moving around the same day of their surgery, and this allows them to be monitored while they're doing those laps around the particular unit. And one of the really interesting things about this is that we didn't anticipate was that the physical therapists who are with the patients can now see when events can happen. And it wasn't something that we had really thought a lot about being part of the use case when we were implementing this system, but we hear lots of reports now about events that happen when patients are taking laps, things that hadn't been previously diagnosed or considered were being visible when the patient was being monitored continuously while they were ambulating.
The device is very lightweight. The patient sometimes doesn't even know that they have it on. Unfortunately, we've had a couple of cases where the patient went home with it because it was so comfortable to wear that they didn't know that they had it on. So that's really important, to allow the patient to move around and not be tethered to the device.
We had hundreds of alarms a day. We had 4,000 alarms on the phone a day during one shift, and this really was driving everyone nuts. This could have been a serious issue, or could have been just playing with a sensor or changing a diaper, or I don't know. So we never knew what really was happening. My name is Caroline Stade. I'm the Chief Nursing Officer of the University Children's Hospital of Basel, and Basel is in Switzerland. Those standalone monitors were connected to phones. If there was an alarm on the phone, the nurses didn't know what happened. So we really had to improve that and change the system with a better monitoring.
My name is Thomas Erb. I'm a pediatric anesthesiologist and work at the University Children's Hospital of Basel in Switzerland. Standalone monitoring were not connected to a central system and did not allow to check remotely. The measurements were not recorded electronically. There was no information exchange between the various devices that were applied to the patients. Masimo provided us the SET technology that allows you to continuously monitor the patient from a central device. We noticed a sharp reduction in false alarms. In addition, we put up also the patient safety net. That's a system that allows you to continuously monitor your patients even on your mobile devices. Overall, this improves the effectiveness of your work. This results in a reduction of stress for the entire team and also for the patients and their parents.
The nurses could rely on the monitor. They had a central station and they knew all the children are safe. Patient safety is the goal. It's not only the device I can rely on, the good trainee and good skills from a nurse. In that combination, this is just perfect.
Today, we are happy with the solution with the Masimo system. On the other hand, we envision further options and new monitoring opportunities. In the end, this must result in an improvement of the care of children, and we are willing to support Masimo with this endeavor.
We always have to be sure that we move on in the quality, also in the quality of the sensors, and I also have to train the skills of the nurses. We continue to collaborate with Masimo to increase the level of care and safety for our children.
Rainbow Pulse Co-oximetry. Breakthrough technology, breakthrough outcomes. The evidence is here. A key study conducted at a hospital in France, CHU Limoges, demonstrated the clinical value of implementing a hospital-wide goal-directed therapy protocol for blood and fluid management using Masimo's Rainbow Pulse Co-oximetry platform. Featuring SpHb, non-invasive continuous hemoglobin monitoring, and Pleth Variability Index, a fluid responsiveness indicator. The study examined the post-surgical mortality rate for 18,716 patients before, during, and after the implementation of a goal-directed therapy protocol for blood and fluid management with SpHb and PVI, finding that among patients treated with the goal-directed therapy algorithm and Masimo technology, there was a significant reduction in post-surgical mortality, reflecting a 33% decline in mortality at 30 days and a 29% decline in mortality at 90 days. Furthermore, the study found mortality rates rebounded to pre-study levels without Masimo technology. Based on the strength of the findings, CHU Limoges has now implemented Rainbow technology featuring SpHb and PVI within their organization. Don't wait to improve your patient outcomes. Learn more at masimo.com/SpHb.
From the second he died, that's the first thing I questioned is where is the fairness? You know, Parker had everything going for him. He'd just newly been married, he was happy. He just always wanted to be a husband and a dad. He just couldn't wait to have kids. And when he was gone, I had no idea. You can die when you're taking these painkillers.
Parker was a healthy 21-year-old. He had his surgery, this is important, he had the surgery done the same day as his sister. I sent them both home with the same medication. Parker took less.
We had a really good night. We put our first Christmas tree up that night. I'm not really sure why we did it so early, but I look back now and I'm grateful for it.
Went to bed, he woke up about 3 or 4. He took a pain medicine then because it was starting to hurt. The other medicine had worn off.
I woke up before him, and so I just walked past the bed and over to the vanity, and I was telling him, I just told him, Parker, it's time to get up, you know, we gotta go. And he was gone already.
He's buried just down the road, so sometimes when I go by, it just sucks my breath away.
If you're on one of our floors and we're giving you pain medication, we insist that you are monitored 24 hours a day. And the second that they leave the hospital or they discharge, we pull that monitor off and say goodbye.
I've had so-and-so's sister or uncle or aunt call me personally and say, what would you do differently? My son needs a tonsillectomy, or my daughter's going in. Make sure your doctor gives you a monitor.
He had people around him almost constantly, very functional, very bright people, a lot of support, and that couldn't save him. A machine could have. No, a machine that is easy to use would have, not could.
It wasn't hard for me to find out about all these other deaths, all these near misses.
They're taking a medicine we told them to take, and it has potentially very dangerous side effects. It's just a blind spot, and society's paying a heavy price for it.
Why is this not being told to people? This can be prevented.
So we began thinking, what can we do for patients at home? This system, we changed it slightly, calling it Masimo Safety Net, to take it home. And we sent the application into FDA. And to our surprise, not only they called it a breakthrough technology, but they chose it as one of 8 products that could help the opioid epidemic out of over 250 applicants, which is a wearable product, lasts 4 days continuously, works with a smartphone to send alerts to the patient themselves taking the opioids, as well as maybe to a loved one or a caregiver, and at some point it'll send it to the nearest ambulance if no one responds. While we're waiting for that, COVID happened, and we made a product called Masimo Safety Net for COVID. And what clinicians were able to do was remarkable. They now could take their ICU for the sickest patients that required intensive care with COVID, and they would send other patients that were detected positive for COVID, monitor them at home, and when something looked bad, like their oxygen dropping below 92%, it would send an alert to the safety net system in the hospital where the central station was, and then they could decide whether they needed to bring the patient in or still manage them from remote location. I think if you think about Masimo, you think about us as safety company, patient safety company, and automation company, a company that helps hospitals automate great care. So we've taken it to the next level. We now have hospital automation as a solution where we connect everything in the hospital together. We not only send it to the EMR, but we bring it back in front of the clinician's view in a way that it doesn't overwhelm them with data they don't need to see, but data that they can act upon. I hope you get a chance to look at some of the technologies that I've talked about. The team here at Masimo has been dedicated to it, worked around the clock to make it happen, and with a little magic and a lot of hard work, it's here. So I hope you take advantage of it. Thank you.